Oh, hello, everyone, and welcome to your Friday afternoon edition of IGN's News, Games, and More. My name's Michael, and I am here with Casey, Tom, and Mitchell. Say hey, everyone. How you
Hello.
guys
Hello.
doing?
Hey, everyone.
Hey. See, some hosts toss in a row. I like the cacophonous cavalcade of just bring it on. Let's get into it. And speaking of, it's a big entertainment news day today. But we are starting with a gaming story, which is our bread and butter. So let's just get into it. As you may know, if you clicked on the headline knowingly instead of randomly stabbing at the internet, Far Cry 6 leaks is what I'm about to segue to. Hey, Mike, good segue. Yeah, Far Cry 6 leaks. It was I'm looking up exactly where it was, a Hong Kong store listing, but we've had the Far Cry 6 launch date as well as our main villain both leaked and seemingly confirmed by Ubisoft later in the day. Tom, what can you tell us about this? I choose you.
Well, this is one in a long and storied tradition of Ubisoft leaks, I think, at this point. Basically, they don't get to have any fun with surprises. So we got this. Originally, it was the PlayStation Store Hong Kong, and then Ubisoft did that thing that I think makes sense to do with leaks, right? Where they say, well, the cat's out of the bag, so we might as well do a tease, right?
Right.
And so they confirmed it with a tease, and yeah, we're going to hear more about it on Sunday. The release date on the Hong Kong listing, which has not been confirmed yet, so we don't know if that is like completely accurate or accurate in all regions, February 18th, 2021. Yeah, it's interesting to see it, man. And I don't know if
Yeah.
somebody wants to get into like how nitty gritty we want to get into like the details, because that store listing, although again, not like things could still change from
Sure.
that. It could have been placeholder in some regards. We don't know. We got to caveat it with that, but like it had a lot of details about the game. It was the store listing for the game.
Speaking as a
Yeah, and
journalist who's go ahead, Mitchell, please.
I was just gonna say, we also last week we had Giancarlo Esposito saying that he was teasing that he was in a big video game coming out next year. And foolishly, I was on last week's a episode of News Games and More last week, and I bet $5 whole that it would be Call of Duty, and that was a dumb bet. I'm sorry. I'm glad I didn't make it with anyone. Because
So everyone on the show is going to get $5, including me, right?
hey, no,
Assumed that bet to be with chat. Anyone who's, I think we had like 1,000 concurrents last week, so we'll work that out. We'll Venmo people. Yeah, I was just gonna ask Tom, as someone who's been on the news beat here a lot longer than me, I didn't even know that was a thing at Ubisoft. Is that a thing particularly at Ubisoft, the constant leaks? Or I guess what I'm getting at is,
yeah.
are there companies that don't leak at all at this point?
No, I think no one's immune to it, right? Like it's there's so many different things where it could be disgruntled employee, it could be just someone trying to do it for fun and making a name for themselves, it could be somebody, who's a contractor who has access that maybe like they shouldn't. It's a million different things that could happen, but Ubisoft definitely has like a long and illustrious history with leaks, and I'm not trying to like grill them for that. It's not like a necessarily a thing to be ashamed about, right? But like
Yeah.
they do, like every Assassin's Creed game is leaked essentially ahead of time. We had just earlier this week there were 2 different gameplay leaks for Assassin's Creed Valhalla, right? Like
Mhm.
the Mario and Rabbids was leaked, and then everybody thought it was going to be terrible, and then they announced it and it was great, right? So like leaks should not be indicative of like what the game is going to be by any means, but it is something that Ubisoft is not
Yeah, and I know
is
there were
really
those
proficient in,
Watchdog Legion screenshots as well, I think.
Yeah, pretty
Um,
much every major Ubisoft game at some point gets accidentally leaked to the point where people now actually genuinely wonder whether it's some sort of marketing strategy.
Mhm.
I don't necessarily think that's the case,
Like
but
conspiracy wise, like
well,
it's
yeah,
an
there's no,
intentional
no
thing at this
evidence.
point.
Yeah, there's no
Sure.
evidence for this, but essentially the idea is, well, if you leak Far Cry 6 on Friday, then everyone is talking about it on Friday, and then on Sunday when they make the announcement, that's like they get another marketing beat out of it, essentially is the theory. But there's no like that's just speculation, right? And I don't necessarily think that like I'd imagine the more likely thing is that there are a bunch of developers working on Far Cry 6 right now going, God dang it, our game leaked. Like,
Yeah.
I'd say that's the much more likely scenario.
Although he did kind of bury the lead. The facet that they have confirmed is, of course, Giancarlo Esposito as what's his name? Alton? Something Castillo. Anton Castillo. And they tweeted this teaser of him just essentially lighting a cigar. That's all we get. But it does confirm Giancarlo Esposito of course, Gus Fring, Breaking Bad fame, and many, many other things. Phenomenal actor. I have never encountered anyone who doesn't agree with that statement. So it's really cool to see him confirmed for this game, especially because Far Cry is so villain centric. It's a staple of the game that the protagonist is almost whoever's around and rises to the challenge, and the villain is really who you sink your teeth into.
Right.
Casey, before we started rolling, didn't you have some theories
Yeah.
to talk about? Yeah,
Yeah.
please
I did.
unpack this for us.
First, I do want to mention that I love that Giancarlo is playing another villain. I think he was phenomenal in Breaking Bad, so I'm stoked to see him play the box cover. He's not the protagonist, but the main antagonist, as we've seen like Far Cry 3. Voss was also the antagonist on the box art, and there are some theories that our own Joe Screbbles pointed out in a tweet this morning. Below him in the box art is a guy or a kid named Diego, and Joe pointed out that he has the same scar on his right eyebrow as Voss. And it's not the big one, it's the small one that's just like
That's
cutting
I was
through.
gonna
the
say,
hair a
I
little
got
bit.
into an argument with Joe Bert, our coworker, because it's whether it was flipped or not. Or so you're
Yeah.
saying there's two, he has a scar on both eyebrows?
He does. He has a really
Voss,
big
once
one
he's an
and then a
adult. Yeah.
small one, like in the middle of an eyebrow. And the one that matches Voss and Diego have the same one and the same eyebrow. Both games are also taking place in a fictional tropical location. And I know that Far Cry 3 took place on what was called the Rook Islands,
Rook
which
Islands, that's right.
which isn't where Far Cry 6 is going to be taking place, but there is some speculation whether Far Cry 6 might be a prequel to Far Cry 3, and we can see the backstory of Voss, even though it's not technically canon, because Voss's backstory in Far Cry 3 is that he was born and raised on the Rook Islands, and since this is a different place, it doesn't totally match up. But I mean, he is a bad guy and he's kind of crazy, so maybe he was lying about it.
It's true, and it would be a Better Call Saul reunion because Michael Mando, who's Voss, is also Better Call Saul. So that would be
Exactly.
fun to just see them against each other in a video
Mhm.
game. There was a little more. This is a translation from the listing that leaked on the Hong Kong store. But yeah, as we've referenced somewhat obliquely, well, first of all, they said it would, quote, be the largest Far Cry playground to date. I think with a
Every-
franchise like
They
this,
say that every time.
you
Everything's
assume
gonna
that's
get bigger,
true.
bigger, bigger.
Yep. And they called it a tropical paradise frozen in time. And that frozen in time part, of course, has led to widespread speculation that it's like a Cuba-esque situation because they usually do sort of analogous areas. And I would love to see that. The frozen in time aspect's really interesting, driving classic cars around. Apparently meeting a guy named Chorizo at some point because that's one of the bonus items you can unlock, but no one knows what it's in reference to. I think that's all we have about this. Do we have any huge Far Cry fans on today? I'd call myself like
Yeah.
a major. I mean, I've played every single one and all the expansions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love Far Cry. I think it's interesting because Giancarlo is obviously well known for playing villains. So, and Far Cry is a franchise that's it's known for a lot of things. It's known for wonderful open world first person stealth action, but it's also known for its villains. I think what's interesting about the choice to have Giancarlo on this is that his Gus Fring is a character that's not he's not like overtly insane like
Yeah.
characters in Far Cry typically are. He's very subtle. And I'm curious to know what a Giancarlo Far Cry villain looks like, because you look at Voss, you look at Pagan Min, you look at Joseph C. These are all almost like cartoonish characters in terms of how crazy they are. So I'm very excited to see this trailer. We always see that first trailer is always kind of like the most memorable introduction to the world of Far Cry. So I can't wait to see his villain speech or whatever they have for this.
His seed screed or what
Yeah.
have you. Yeah, it's also one of the franchises where I think it matters the most what location they pick. There was a comment I wanted to shout out at IGN.com. Dunker said Polar Cry 6 ? Which I believe is a reference to some kind of expectation that it was going to be Polar at some point, a code name leaked, or it's just mimetic, but there was speculation it would somehow be icy and it's tropical again. I don't really care. Like I was very excited about 5 because the Americana aspect was so novel to me, but I'm open to whatever they want to take us toward. I love when they go really big with it, like Primal was so interesting to me. How do you guys feel about Yara as a setting? Are you excited about it, or just tentatively like, I'll play it and see how it is? What do you think?
I'm totally cool with them going back to tropical, especially after 4 and 5, just because like it's been a while since 3 came out, right? And 3, I think, and you guys can correct me on this if I'm wrong, 3 is still sort of like holds the high spot in a lot of people's minds in terms of Far Cry. No shade meant to be thrown at 4 or 5, but like the idea that they would make such an impression with 3 and then spend a couple games going elsewhere, trying other locations, and now, you know, this is going to be on next gen systems as well, probably. I mean, almost certainly. And so they have such a gap where now they can revisit the jungle that kind of put Far Cry on the map and be like, all right, what can we do with this setting you guys liked in Far Cry now that we have a lot more tools? We learned a lot of lessons from the other games. We've gone elsewhere. So I'm totally cool with revisiting that location. I don't necessarily think that just like dropping it in the Arctic would have been a great, like the right move, you know?
Yeah,
there's
got to be a reason.
Yeah. What have we not done? Casey, what do you think about the setting? You down for Yara?
Yeah, I'm down for it as well. I mean, I like tropical settings in games generally because it just kind of screams adventure more than a lot of other things. I mean, Skyrim is great, but I like jungle settings, and I think what will make this feel apart from different Far Cries is more of the story rather than the setting. And I think they can do a lot of interesting things with the characters that is fine if the setting is slightly similar to a previous one. Because it seems, and I think we're all just assuming this is set in the past, but I think a different time period will make a big enough difference as well.
That's true. I assume that without even thinking about it because of the Voss connection, but it might just be 2020 Yara. Just to finish out the things that were leaked, not everything confirmed, of course. All we have confirmed is that it will be discussed on Sunday's stream. It will seemingly, according to the Hong Kong store leak, receive a free PS4 to PS5 upgrade. So it seems confirmed, or seemingly is the right word. Seemingly that bridge will be that gap will be bridged. And then the last things I just wanted to make sure we got out before we move on are that Diego is said to be the son of Anton. So the kid on the box is, quote, following in his bloody footsteps. I don't know if that means you'll play as Diego and build an empire or oppose them both, but such is the nature of unsubstantiated leaks.
So I think it says the protagonist is apparently a local called Danny Rojas.
Okay, there you go. So
there we go.
That's interesting that there's, I mean, Voss had an additional antagonist. There was an additional antagonist in FC3 as well, but just can't wait to see how they handle it.
And then Far Cry 5 had like the whole seed family, so each seed kind of had like a different part of the map that they controlled. So I think Far Cry 5 did a lot of really cool things that that Far Cry 6 should probably, carry the torch on. And I'm excited to play it.
Absolutely. All right, but let's move on to our second story, the Batman spinoff series, which seemingly is good. That's my favorite word today. Stop saying seemingly. Is going to focus on GCPD, the Gotham City Police Department. And of course, this follows in the wake of another Batman show that focused on the GCPD Gotham. But that's the news, and it's officially a tie-in or spinoff. I don't know if you can, it will be a spinoff, but it's a spinoff before The Thing is out with Robert Pattinson's The Batman. What else do we know about that? I'm going to go ahead and throw to Mitchell. See if he's prepared.
No, I know very little about Batman, unfortunately. Like, gotcha. the TV series or universe of Batman. I don't watch Gotham. I don't watch
So this is the interesting thing about this. So this was a report that Variety broke this news, and the interesting thing about this TV show specifically is that it's a new show set. When I first heard the news, I was like, that's weird that they're calling a spin-off of the movie, but it is actually a spin-off of the movie, right? Like there's all these DC Universe shows already, like Batwoman or Batgirl, sorry, and like all these like Gotham, all those shows, but seemingly this is, and we don't know for sure if it's connected or not, but like this is connected to the new Robert Pattinson movie specifically. It's set in that world, and we don't know if there's going to be characters crossing over or that sort of thing. They haven't talked to cast yet, but this is that it is a spin-off of that film specifically, and that's kind of interesting to me because like DC has this whole television universe that they did Crisis on Infinite Earths, and they have all these tie-ins, and it's funny that they're now tying in a different way, and it's so clear kind of like this move to me, not that I think it's bad or good, just shows how different DC is handling their properties compared to Marvel. Like there was a period of time where DC was just trying to do DCU, right? Like they were they were trying to do their own cinematic universe to fight with against Avengers. And it seems like they've just completely, fully, entirely moved away from that idea. And now they're doing it comic book style, which is just, we're going to tell this story in this part of Gotham, and then somebody else can tell a different Gotham story. And the fact that they don't have chronology with each other doesn't matter. Like, we'll just tell these different stories and call them both Batman or call them both Joker, and it's okay. And the audience will figure it out. And I think that's probably what's going to happen. But like, it's very different.
Yeah, I do think it's cool that there's all these different universes, and you get to see all these different portrayals of like, this is Batman in, the Dark Knight universe. This is Batman, or this is Joker in, the standalone Joker movie. There's all these different portrayals of these beloved characters, and I think that's really awesome. I just haven't watched a lot of them.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, it's cool because what you're mentioning, like it's doing it like comic books do. I mean, there are so many different ways of presenting Batman out there, and they're all unique and interesting and cool in their own way. And like everyone has their favorite rendition of Batman and of an artist and story. And this is a cool way of doing it. But I do think, I think people might get confused if they're watching one thing and the other. But I was wondering if with all of these DC shows coming out, I mean, we're getting a Green Lantern series, we're getting a Justice League series, we're getting, we already have Batwoman. Like, is there going to be any crossover? Is that why they're doing all of these at the same time? But
right, and that's almost interesting because I feel like they're antithetical. Or the more pipe you lay that like goes out to other shows, and it's like you need to have seen this show to understand this climactic season finale of this show. That sort of tugs against the idea of different artists are just going to sweep in and Logan it and do whatever they want.
yeah,
And it's not going to tie to anything. It'll be interesting to see if they can balance both, because I agree that with what Tom said, it seems like they're trying to find a niche that Marvel is voluntarily not entering, because Marvel's very about the canon. It's the canon. There's one canon.
Well,
yeah.
I loved what Marvel did with their Netflix series. I thought that was really interesting to have all of those different characters tell. Most of them are really great and had really awesome stories, and to tie them all together, I thought was a really cool way to reward people who stuck with all of the different series. But I don't, like Tom said, I don't really see DC doing the same thing.
Yeah.
But also with the Netflix series for MCU or for the Marvel Netflix series, you're totally right that I loved the way they did those, even if the quality of the actual shows was varying. But they also started those Netflix shows kind of with this idea that they were connected to the MCU, like Daredevil referenced certain things that was
they
happening.
tried. Yeah.
And then they just dropped it. And then they just stopped caring, right? Like the fact that like Hell's Kitchen at one point absolutely like blew up was never going to be mentioned by Iron Man. And so by the same way, like there was going to be like none of the people in the Netflix world ever referenced events later on in the MCU in their runs, because it was just like convoluted. But my hope with all these DCU things is that they at least like, Yeah, I think, Swaim, your point about like, are you gonna have to watch all of these things to need to know these like small references? Hopefully, they just still make them fun for the people that know them and not intrusive for the people that don't. Like, Brandon Routh came back as Superman for Crisis on Infinite Earths. And like, I'd be willing to bet that a lot of the people who watched Crisis on Infinite Earths obsessively and like watched those the WB shows didn't probably see that Superman movie, right? And like, it didn't necessarily like his presence there didn't necessarily like make that worse, right? It didn't detract from it, but the people that did get it appreciated that and they liked that, and so therefore like you can appeal to like you can have Easter eggs for some people while also just like not having them be obtrusive to the people that don't get them. Hopefully,
Definitely, it's just a matter of can you or you
Right,
know.
right.
I've seen cases where people do that masterfully. Pixar comes to mind, and cases where people don't seem to know how to do that. I hope I wish them all the success in the world. We should mention that from the Variety article, the thing we do know is the as yet untitled series will be produced by Matt Reeves, the director of the Batman. So it's definitely of a piece and like continuous with the film in almost every way, and that it's going to be coming to HBO Max. And I don't know about everyone on this panel, but the HBO insignia still means something to me. That
Yeah.
always bodes well for
I
yeah.
also wonder if this speaks to the confidence they have in that movie. Like
Mm.
the confidence in the universe and the story that they're telling in that movie, that it's worth expanding upon in a TV show that's much more long form and can get really way more in depth about the world and the setting than a movie can.
Of course, and we've seen these tantalizing like camera tests of this Batman is clearly a very specific kind of Batman. His car is a little stripped down and almost retro, and he has that thing that may or may not be a gun re-put back together in his chest. So knowing that it's a direct tie-in, I just think it's going to be interesting to get to dig into whatever it turns out to be. A Batman who's clearly specific. It's a very specific vision of Batman.
Yeah.
I love me a new Batman. As WVU fan 17 says, keep the Batman content coming. That's been a true statement in my entire 15 years of making internet content. I'm
But,
gonna move
but man,
us.
I really
Wow.
would like a new Batman game, a new Batman Arkham game. We've been waiting a long time for that.
Sure.
Someday,
That's
someday,
true.
Mitchell.
Let your hopes die.
Did you play the VR one?
Yeah, I
Timed
did.
over?
I
But
did.
did you see we're probably getting a Suicide Squad game? That's like the same thing, right? I'm being totally facetious. Don't attack me.
Let
They
all
will
hope
anyway.
die, Mitchell. Just
Yeah.
let that like that glowing sort of beam of light that is still shining down, just snuff it out.
Speaking of hope, distilled like so much aspic in a beam of light from the heavens. Xbox head Phil Spencer says that Series X games will not be held back by the fact that they are cross-compatible with the Xbox One. That fills me with hope. I know it's part of a product rollout, but he made some compelling points. This was an interview with Games Industry. And he basically just called out the PC comparison. Basically, his opinion is, I mean, I'll try to quote it, but I also don't want to kill your time. But he was essentially, I'm paraphrasing a very long thing. You can again find that at Games Industry. But he basically talked about his assertion that the idea that cross-gen compatibility holds the higher or further along gen game version back in terms of developers building the system they want to that needs to bridge both. A meme created by people who don't understand the nitty gritty of how that's done. And he says, look at PC games and how they are able to port to every system, and that developers know how to do this. I've seen reactions on our site and across sites far and wide that that say, no, I believe that he's lying and it will hold it back. And people who saying, I believe him, it sounds fine. I basically just want to go around the horn and ask how people took this news, and if it seems like non-news to you in the sense that you're like, I know a lot about this, and yes, that is how it works, or if you have any kind of call out as far as the validity of this.
I can take this one actually,
Awesome.
unlike the last one.
Okay, I'll make a note. Batman, no. Detailed technical issues, yes. That's good.
Yeah, I mean, Phil Spencer is doing his job here.
Right.
In terms of making the console seem like it's going to be the next great thing. My only issue with that statement is that it makes this assertion that the only thing that is going to be different about next gen is going to be graphics, because obviously PC games can be parried down to work on consoles. But for me, the thing I'm most excited about for next gen is the SSD, is how the added power is going to affect games in ways that we can't have those games on current consoles. The thing that makes me most excited about next gen right now is seeing that Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart gameplay demo, where you see Ratchet going through one level, and then all of a sudden he jumps through a rift. He's in a dimensional space for like 2 seconds, and then he's in a completely new level with all new assets, and it looks absolutely incredible. That's the kind of stuff that I really hope for in next gen. And to say that you can just put that experience of Ratchet and Clank onto the PS4, I just don't buy it, because the PS4 can't handle loading like that.
Yeah.
And they made it fundamental to how the game functions. That's true.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
that's my piece on it. But I'm curious to know what other people think.
On one hand, I get what he's saying, but on the other hand, I don't entirely believe him. Like, so just take Monster Hunter World, for example. You put it on the PC, and all of a sudden, all of the loading problems are gone, and it does look marginally better, but it doesn't look exponentially better unless you install texture packs that didn't come with the game. And I believe they were fan made. I'm not entirely sure. Tom, do you know that?
No, I think the 4K texture packs are
We're part of it.
They're official, but they're separate. Yeah.
Yeah, official but separate. So like maybe they could implement something like that, but I also know it takes a lot of work and time to scale down games to work on both. So
yeah.
But on the other hand, I also want to mention, like, wasn't there a reason why Crysis was a PC exclusive for so long? It took that long for consoles to be good enough to run that. So to say that they aren't having to scale down the potential of Xbox Series X games at all, I don't know. I don't believe it. Like, sure, I think they'll look great and run better on the Xbox Series X, but will they be using the full potential of the new generation of consoles? I don't think so.
Right. And I know they're both Microsoft, so they have obviously a large interest in PC gaming as well. But I did find it interesting that his argument is essentially throwing the shine on PC gaming, knowing that that's literally part of the audience that you're either deciding we're never going to win them, or we're trying to eat away at the edges of that or something. It almost seemed to be throwing, like, his argument almost seems to be saying, I think at some point, his quote is like, but of course, so that's how you know, because the richest version of the game is always on PC. And I'm like, that's true. I should just buy a PC. And I don't know if that's the takeaway he wanted me to get from the interview.
So this is a complex thing for sure, and I think you guys touched on it really well. Like, a big thing to note too is that this is a response to Sony, right? This is a response to something Sony is doing, where Microsoft said, we're going to try to get Xbox Series X games to play on PS4 and Xbox One game, Xbox One, and we're going to try to get Xbox One games to play on Series X, and we want that to go both ways for this generational jump, right? To get people on board either direction. Where Sony said, we're not doing that. Your PS4 games we're going to try to get your PS4 games to play on PS5, but PS5 games fundamentally should not be held back by also needing to work on PS4. And that's what this is a response to. So it's good to have that context. I think that he is right in a lot of ways, and I think that he is, to Mitchell's point, he's doing his job trying to sell the system in other ways. And Swim, to your point about it being PC focused, like, you got to remember, Microsoft is looking at this generation differently, and they're looking at Xbox differently now. And Xbox doesn't mean the Xbox Series X and the Xbox One. It means Xbox Series X, Xbox One, and Windows, right? Mm-hmm. They are fundamentally, as a business, have changed their mind about, we're going to only do things on this box, right? They have absolutely shifted gears in a very real way there. I think he's completely right when he says all you got to do is look at the PC of any modern game, and yeah, the best experience is going to be on the max settings crazy PC. That's true, but the thing Mitchell brought up is exactly why this argument doesn't totally hold water to me, because what it ignores is how even the PC version of a game has to be scaled back to run on the lowest common denominator of a console, right?
Mhm.
You can make a game way better on PC, but if there are fundamental things that needed to be added because you're targeting a lower tech system, then it doesn't matter how high spec your thing is and how much prettier you can make it look and how you can add ray tracing and how it can load faster and all those other things. If you're fundamentally adding things to the design of a game, for instance, if a game makes you creep through a little hallway that you can't get by that's actually a loading screen in disguise, right? The highest spec PC at the highest settings doesn't get rid of that thing being added to the video game in order to cater to a lower spec rig. And like, I think that's where Phil Spencer's argument doesn't totally hold water, is he's completely right. And I think in the way that they're thinking about Xbox and they're thinking about Xbox and PC kind of being this singular platform moving forward, he's completely right. But I think that there are still concessions made that are unavoidable and maybe in his eyes not significant enough to matter, right? Like maybe that's the point he's making too, is the Series X is going to be able to improve past stuff. The Xbox One will still be able to run things really, really well. We don't feel like we're being limited in the way that people are presenting it. And I think that's totally fair because we just don't have the answer to that yet publicly, right? But the stuff we do know is not quite as like forgiving to, I think, the argument he's making, in my opinion. Not that it's wrong, just that it's like, it's more nuanced than how he's presenting it.
Yes, although there's still a lot of value in his core point. Part of the quote in the long diatribe is, yes, next gen should push the envelope and do things that only next gen can do, but at the end of the day, we want people to be able to play the games. And my heart does go out to someone who only owns a Switch and they finally got to play Witcher. That's awesome for them. Doesn't matter if it's down-res; it's a delightful experience.
And that's a totally different thing, right? Like the discussion about whether these things can run or are held back or blah, blah, blah. Like that's a totally different discussion from their philosophy that they'd rather bring people along than leave a generation behind. Like that's just two different strategies from Microsoft and Sony. And like, they're very clear about why they're doing this, right? Like, even if they're spinning it a little bit, like they're definitely very clear about like, we just want people to be able to play these games regardless of what Xbox system they're playing them on. And that is, I think, totally, totally admirable.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I wasn't trying to take away from the value of that because there is inherently value in that, assuming there will be crossplay as well. Like, so then some of your friends upgrade, you'll still be able to play with them, which is amazing. And it seems like the PlayStation isn't going to offer that. So the PlayStation 5 will offer games made just for the PS5 to use the system at its absolute best, whereas Xbox will have games that allow you to play with friends who may not have been able to upgrade. And I think there's value in both.
Absolutely. Now I'm very curious, based on Mitchell's point, how it will Rift Apart be? I mean, they said they'll all... Anyway. I'm going to move us on. We're rapidly approaching out of time-ish, so just a heads up to our producer. I'm going to go ahead and skip our next story and go to our big climactic story. This way the clips will match up. I wanted to talk about F9, the button on your keyboard that you can program to... No, Furious 9. Although I guess the F stands for both. It's not FF9, it's F9. So
Fast
it's either
9.
or Furious 9. No? Or are they not mad anymore? Is that the art? They've matured.
Fast, but not furious.
Yeah, fast, but we're pretty cool. We're chill, actually. Ludacris, of course, the mainstay of the franchise, seemingly confirming that F9, which was delayed due to coronavirus, but will come to us someday, is finally going to go to... I'm sorry. They're going to go to...
You're doing a Tim Curry right now. Space!
They're going to space. Yeah, F9's going to space. It was funny because he actually got called out. He was in an interview and she was like, I don't know, space, because a lot of people have suggested that they eventually go to space, of course. And Ludacris said, I will say that you're very intuitive because you said something right, but I'm not going to give it away. And she said, you mean space? And he covered his mouth. So I think we will be headed to space. And that delights me. I have a soft spot for the movies. I've seen them all multiple times. What do you guys think about them finally tackling space? I don't see it as breaking the franchise. It's to be
Do we know what the
expected.
subtitle is going to be yet? Because I want everyone to guess what it's going to be.
Is it not just F9?
If the cops chase them, it could be pigs in space, but yeah, it depends. I don't know.
Space race?
Yeah.
Fast 9 space race?
If that's the plot, if that's the actual plot, is that they do a race in space?
Space Wars. Yeah, they have to tangle with Space Force trying to pull them over for smuggling DVD players. Now that
here's
we're
the
in
thing.
space, big clunky DVD players are necessary again. We've taken a step back to the roots. Tom,
Here's the
you're
thing.
saying.
Like, Fast and the Furious is such a just hilarious franchise to me, and I love it because like it went on this amazing trajectory where it started. The very first one was just literally a Point Break ripoff, but with cars. And then it had a few movies where it was just like wild Hot Wheels, right? And then it had like a high art moment with Fast 5 where it was like a genuinely incredible film experience.
Yeah.
And then from that point, they just went right back into Hot Wheels. And they've just been amping up the stakes every movie. And I'm like totally cool with that. I just like, they can go absolutely anywhere they want with this series. Idris Elba was a literal superhero in the spinoff. Like, they just don't care anymore, and I'm here for it. So space is great. I'm fine with it.
Yeah, Chris Morgan, who's written every single one since Tokyo Drift, said nothing is out of the question. Absolutely nothing. It just has to be cool and good. That's the thing.
That's the attitude I want from the person writing Fast and the Furious. I don't want a single other attitude.
I got John Wick vibes. Yeah, very like, I don't know, man. It's just got to be cool. Let's just make it as cool as possible. Shadow1149 says, how is it when a franchise runs out of fuel? They always go to space. 007, Friday the 13th, now Fast and the Furious.
Friday the
It's true.
13th went to space?
Yeah,
it's me.
Jason went to space. That's true. Am I connecting the right one to the right one? Jason's the hockey mask, right? Yeah, he went to space.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I didn't see it, but I saw the poster and he was in space. Yeah, I would argue that it's a little more supported in this, only because we do have 9 full films of the gradual. First, you just drove a car, then you drifted your car, then and you slowly reach to jumping a submarine. Someone who can jump a submarine and, flip a plane around, you're approaching space capabilities. I think for franchises like this, Fast and Furious has actually ramped us into space territory pretty smoothly. It's one of the only franchises I expect to jump the shark, and jumping the shark is not jumping the shark for this franchise, in my opinion. Yeah. It's what they do.
It's so funny existing as someone who has lived outside of the Fast and Furious fandom for as long as it's been going on. Like Tom said, when the first movie came out, I'm like, oh, it's a dumb car movie. I'm not super into cars. I'm just gonna pass on it. And then because I didn't watch the first one, I didn't watch any of the other ones after that. But then having car rides with Mark Medina and listening to that man describe verbatim the plot of every single Fast and Furious movie from the first one all the way up to Fast 8 or whatever it was at, and just like, is this a superhero franchise? What is happening here?
Also, are car accidents just fine? We can just get in car accidents. They don't seem to hurt anyone.
Yeah, so it's been wild, just not knowing anything about Fast and Furious and having it described to me by someone as passionate about it as Mark. It's been wild.
I'm pretty sure Jonathan Dornbush is super into Fast and Furious. I'm curious as to what he thinks about this as well.
I'm sure he's on board. We've had
He's
many a
probably
Fast.
on the moon, you guys, about this.
Oh, boo.
Ah,
I think the worst part about Fast 9 is that it should have been out already, and it's not, and I haven't seen it yet.
that's true. It was delayed till I thought I jotted down the date. Oh well,
April?
I'm doing my job by not doing it. You can
It
find
was
that information at
originally set.
IGN.com, where you should
Well,
go immediately following this show.
yeah.
No, go ahead, Casey, please.
It's originally set to come out on May 22nd of this year, but was delayed to April 2021.
There you go. So we started with a leak, we ended with a ludicrous leak. That is all the time we have. Any final fast thoughts before I ramp us out of here and do a sick
I just
whatever?
wanted to read a couple of these suggestions.
Please.
Fast 9 spacing fast. Fast and Furious spacing out.
Oh, I didn't see these. This is great. Okay, well, we'll be back on Monday at the same time, and it will be an episode entirely comprised of your Fast 9 subtitles and more, and some gaming news. We'll try and squeeze gaming news in, but we'll see. I want to thank Tom, Mitchell, and Casey for being here. Thanks, everyone, for watching. That's all for today's news, games, and more. We'll catch you Monday.
Bye-bye.